Now, here are some hard facts. British Airways lost £245 million in the 9 months through to December, and its sales fell by 13%. But remember, losing money is just a symptom of BA's disorder. The causes are many and varied, as Elliott Gotkine investigates.
From the world's favourite airline to the industry's intensive care unit, BA's problems are so severe that sorting them out could take years.
With losses racking up and a pension deficit bigger than its market value, BA knows that change is in the air. A fresh start with what effectively amounts to a new super lean fleet could be the solution.
According to the Observer newspaper, the airline is looking to create a new BA within BA. No longer would staff be divided into discrete short-haul and long-haul camps. New crew would be recruited on lower pay and benefits. In all likelihood, they'd be less prone to industrial action.
British Airways is always living in interesting times. The advantage, in one sense, at the moment, is that they can try to make sure that they come out of this recession slimmer than they went in.
BA would neither confirm nor deny the plans, though there are other factors out there beyond its control.
Traffic is starting to come back, but it's coming back slowly, and it's still not quite getting back to the levels it was before the crisis. But at the same time, fuel has started to rise. So the full recovery of earnings may be some way off, but people will travel again, and they will travel in the front of the bus.
Signs are this is already happening. Great. BA makes most of its money from first and business class travel and is spending £100 million to spruce up its premium cabins. But a £4 billion pension deficit is delaying a merger with Spain's Iberia. US authorities have delayed plans for a closer alliance with American. And given the union's hatred of even cosmetic changes to staffing, they're unlikely to take a full-blown revolution lying down. Elliott Gotkine, Bloomberg News at Heathrow Airport.
So we're looking at a two-tier British Airways as it tries to reinvent itself from within. Can this conceivably work? Well, let's ask an expert, as John Strickland joins me now from JLS Consulting. John, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, these figures, let's put them in some context. Are they better or worse than we were expecting at this stage?
They were slightly better than analysts were projecting, and particularly the fact that the last quarter they actually made an operating profit when they were expected to lose money. So that's a marginal optimistic factor there. They've also reported their January passenger figures today, but they still show traffic is falling overall, but they've said without quantifying it that their long-haul premium traffic is slightly growing year on year, but that's going to be set against 2 years ago when traffic was really much more buoyant than today.
Right. The thing about British Airways is that's where it makes its money, isn't it, on the business class and the long haul. And of course, that's been hit very, very hard by recession. The question is, I guess, as the world comes out of a global recession, are people going to fly long haul, and are they going to fly there in first and business? That's what BA needs to know, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think British Airways feels there are two factors here. In short haul, they don't expect any kind of recovery in that premium business traffic, and that's really because the agenda in those markets is now set by the successful low-cost carriers, particularly EasyJet and Ryanair. Long haul, we don't know exactly how business traffic is going to come back. There are, as I said, those glimmers of indication it is going to come back, but it's not enough to restore to the levels of buoyancy that we had in the past. And British Airways can't really afford to wait and see if it comes back as strong as it did before, because every day it's bleeding in the present operating environment. So it has to assume, and I think rightly, that there will be structural change in travel patterns. People maybe travel less often, or they'll downgrade cabins. BA itself is now, for example, not offering first class on all its routes.
Yes. Now, let's look a little bit at this two-tier system. We touched on it in the package. Can you explain a bit more about what that's about?
Well, British Airways has made progress with all its industrial working groups in terms of changes in working practices to increase productivity on a permanent basis, not asking for short-term sacrifices from staff, but to say permanently, if we don't change, we can't in any way compete or guarantee our survival compared to our leaner competitors, whether they are low-cost carriers on the short-haul market or lower cost-based carriers, for example, in Middle East and Asia. Now, they're taking, you could say, quite a pragmatic view. They're not asking existing staff to take a pay cut as such or work massively differently.
Right.
So they're saying for new staff, we do want to make more advanced changes. We have to do that if they benchmark themselves against their competitors, and that's where they're still having the difficulty in their discussions with the Unite Union.
Now, talking about Unite, it does look like there may be a strike. They may have to do that to push through these structural changes. Is it worth it for British Airways? It would be such a disaster, I guess, to the reputation if you had a big Easter strike at this stage.
I think British Airways has already suffered precisely because of the fact that they were looking like they were going to have a strike at Christmas.
Yes.
That would have cost them bookings. Right now, people will be booking on other carriers. BA's competitors are the only winners here, as people are worried that there may be a late winter, early spring strike. They can't afford to back off. They have no room for manoeuvre. They've achieved this understanding by other areas of the workforce, some of whom, for example, the pilots, have audited BA's management claims and found they are indeed valid. Unite doesn't appear to have done that. If they don't make these changes, they will lose more ground on the short-haul arena, have the risks that we talked about on the long-haul market. They can't guarantee their future, either in size or indeed independence as a business.
Now, they have got this tie-up with Iberia. How important is that to them?
Well, British Airways is very constrained in its principal operating base, London Heathrow. There's very little spare capacity available, and of course the big question mark about whether there will or won't be a new runway coming up at that airport in the next few years. The only way it can grow is by expanding outside of its London base, and so Iberia, which has much more room to grow in Madrid, is very well placed to allow it to do that, because one area where British Airways is not particularly strong in its operation is the Latin American market, where, as you would expect historically, Iberia is. So there's a very good complementarity. It puts them back into the bigger league to compete more fully with other groups in Europe, such as the Lufthansa group of companies or Air France-KLM.
Now, if this doesn't work, if the tie-up doesn't work, if the pension deficit can't be sorted out, can you actually see British Airways going bust, or will they survive?
I would be optimistic and say that they will survive. They can't guarantee to be there in the same size and shape. They can't guarantee independence. I think they need to make these strategic steps forward. The pension hole is, of course, a problem faced by many companies, not only in the airline sector, and we have to wait and see how things pan out in terms of evaluation in a few months' time. Iberia is important, and equally important is the achievement of the antitrust immunity deal with American Airlines and Iberia for the transatlantic market. These are all things which BA needs, one, to be efficient and competitive in the marketplace, and also to allow it to have a viable future to grow and achieve continued success.
Okay. John Strickland, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.